What's up, everyone? This is Diego with Listener's Notes. Today I sort of wanted to go through a few of the albums that I've been listening to this week, give you some quick opinions in a quick video. I'm going to start with the bad ones and work my way up to the good ones. First one I wanted to talk about is the new album from Lights titled Skin&Earth. Lights is a pop star, one of the first artists that I reviewed back when I was doing the written ones. And she did this sort of acoustic cover album thing where she was remaking some of her older songs, and at the time it sort of intrigued me. It wasn't very good and I wasn't satisfied with it in the end, but that made me interested in her as an artist. Sadly, she never really carried that ambition or started making interesting acoustic style music. Instead, this is some of the most dime a dozen bland pop you can probably find anywhere. The beats are all incredibly boring, just typical EDM. The vocals aren't very good, and I just don't see the appeal of this now in 2017 when I could go listen to a Lorde album or even a Lady Gaga album or a Charlie XCX album. At least they're interesting. They might not make great things all the time at all, but at least someone like a Gaga is interesting and she tries. This isn't trying, this is phoning in a very craptastic pop album. It's a 35 out of 100. It's not worth anyone's time, to be completely honest. The other bad project I wanted to talk about is the new Prophets of Rage self-titled album. Now, the Prophets of Rage, that's essentially this supergroup that did blow up on Twitter. When I heard about it, I was like, oh my god, this is ridiculous. It's 3 members, the guitarist, drummer, and bassist of Rage Against the Machine, along with Cypress Hill's Be Real and Chuck D of Public Enemy. I also think the DJ of Public Enemy is on. I'm not completely sure, so don't quote me on that. But anyway, on to the point here. This supergroup sort of came together. I don't know why. I guess, was it because of police brutality? Was it because of Donald Trump? Was it because of Flint? Is there a central reason, or was it just all the stuff's happening in America? Let's team up and, make some rebellious music, which in theory sounds cool, especially since we have so many legends in this group who have spoken out against social things for years. The only issue is, the lyrics on this album are awful. They don't talk about anything. They're just a bunch of rock cliches. Instead of actually saying what I should care about, instead they just say, let's fight, let's rebel, let's stand up for ourselves against who knows what. If you're not explaining specific scenarios and you're just gonna drop cliche lyrics that have been in garbage rock for years now, you're not gonna get anyone interested. No one is gonna care. There's no movement here. It just sounds phoned in. The lyrics from both Be Real and Chuck D are god awful. They suck, and the flows are old hat, dime a dozen as hell, and not that interesting. The beats are the only okay part, and they're super bland. The only interesting part is the sound quality. I do like that everything's a little gritty, everything's slightly lo-fi and grimy. I like that a lot, actually. The production and overall sound actually fits the style of album, in my opinion, and I do think the beats sound okay. There's an occasional guitar loop that isn't terrible. The drums, the bass, it sounds good, but it's really nothing special. And as far as Rage goes, they've done so much better, to the point where why would I play this when I could play any Rage album, where Zach De La Rocha is actually performing something good. So that's kind of my opinion on that. I don't think it's as bad as the Lights project. It's a 42 out of 100 for me, this Prophets of Rage project, but it's still a disappointment. I mean, I didn't think they would make anything good. I guess this is kind of what I expected, but all this talent, they have so much talent there, and this is it. Everyone is saying it's because they're old. I don't think that's why. I think there's plenty of artists at their age. Roger Waters in particular, lead singer Pink Floyd, much older. Pink Floyd was big in the 70s. This dude is made some of the best political stuff I've heard this year. Is it a great album? No, but it is poignant. It sounds pretty decent. I mean, that's actual effort. The The Prophets of Rage in general is just a phoned-in cash grab, and it should not be getting any more attention after this. Alright, let's move on to the mediocre albums. I want to talk about Chelsea Wolfe's Spun. So Chelsea Wolfe is a gothic, folk, goth rocker type of artist here, combining folk, goth rock, alternative rock into her own sound. And with this new project, she starts diving into doom metal and sludge metal and those types of atmospheric, bass heavy, slow, dense metal sounds. And I was pretty excited for it. I've always liked a lot of Chelsea stuff. It's very obtuse and it's hard to get into at times, but she does make some fantastic work. The single 16 Psych for this album blew me away. It was incredible. I was automatically hooked. One of my favorite rock songs this year. Also the single Vex, really good. Not on the same like tier for me, but it's still a good song. But when I got to the album, there were so many tracks on it that just dragged on, in my opinion. And when you're doing a doom metal type sound where it's very slow, it's very heavy, it's very methodical, you really have to have some good writing or just some good sound play, something to keep it interesting. And I do think the writing on this album is kind of lacking, to be completely honest. And it really just hurts the album as a whole. When we're in these slow passages, there's not enough transitions. The guitars are pretty one-dimensional. The vocals aren't really adding much. And this happens kind of too often. I do think there are some good tracks here that keep this album from being bad, but there's a lot of moments where this album is just a complete chore to get through. That's why it's a 57 out of 100 for me. I do still think that Chelsea can make a lot of stuff that I like, and I'm going to continue to pay attention to her. This album just didn't do it for me personally. The last mediocre one I wanted to talk about is Ghostmane Hexada. Ghostmane is a SoundCloud rapper. He's one of those. He's probably the edgiest one I think I've ever heard, like point blank, period. Absolute edgelord. The lyrics are on some horrorcore type shit, just gruesome, violent, kind of stuff. The bass is loud, intense, distorting. It's probably the most intense part of the mix half of the time. There's these shots of distorted feedback and noise, and Ghostmane, he goes between a typical SoundCloud rap flows, stuff that you've heard from Bones and Suicide Boys, and he combines those with a lot of just throat-shredding screams. Like half of the vocals on this album have to be screams. They have to be. And it's an insane ride. I actually love the idea of that. It didn't really work for me in terms of execution, though. Like, for me, Ghostmane is completely style over substance because I love his style so much. I think it could translate into some freaking incredible albums. But like this album here, it doesn't do anything for me. It's only 20 minutes in length. There's no real hard-hitting tracks. Like none of these songs stand well on their own or all that interesting. They're not very well written or developed. They're all pretty short snippets. The lyrics, again, although they are like on some gruesome horrorcore or some death metal type of stuff, like they're not all that interesting. Besides that, they're pretty weak. There's people in those genres who do it better. There's no character. There's no development. Still, I enjoyed this a lot. I wanted to put it in my recommendation list, but I knew, like, as the year goes on, I'm going to realize how much more I only like the idea of Ghostmane than the project itself. That's why it's a 68 out of 100 for me. I do think he will make some stuff that I will love. But with this one here, it's just, I like him in theory more than I like it in practice, essentially. Now, let's talk about the good albums, the albums that I want to recommend to you that you definitely need to check out, starting with the new project from Nolan the Ninja titled Yen. This guy is a New York MC, comes through with some fast flows, an insane shouting type delivery, and a lot of wordplay and lyrical ability. The guy has bars, he has personal stuff, he has one-liners, and he's just an interesting MC. He's actually really, really talented MC. I do have complaints about the production on this album, though. While I do admire how grimy it is, how New York it is, and I do think it sounds pretty good mostly. I think there's one or two beats on this album that I actually can't stand at all, and I think they suck. But besides that, it's pretty good. But it's pretty dime a dozen for New York. Like, it's not very unique. These don't sound like a Nolan beat. They sound like a New York beat. Like, if I went online and Googled New York style beat, I guarantee half of these beats would be on there. It's that dime a dozen and generic in that sense. And I still like the album. I still recommend it to hip hop fans, but that's what's holding it back for me from being like on my year-end list, being a great album, being best of the year quality. Is that honestly, it's a 74 out of 100 because of the talent that Nolan has on the mic. Definitely give him a shot. Next, I want to talk about the new album from The World Is a Beautiful Place and I'm No Longer Afraid to Die. They're an emo band that combines a lot of elements of post-rock into their sound, which is a really cool thing. I think both of the genres actually are done very well, and I think they add upon each other in a really nice way. But what I really enjoyed was just not only the layering of sound, because I think they did that better than they did on any other album. I also like the melodies. I like the compositions, which can be very long and winding. There's some incredible areas where horns are freaking out and drums are freaking out, just areas of intensity like that. But the lyrics here are probably the best on any album by these guys. They're super poignant. They're super critical of certain areas in American society, but they are very obtuse and hard to understand at times. You have to sort of decipher them. There was one song that I do think is talking about the legalization of marijuana. Like, why are people being arrested for selling drugs or whatever when there's pharmacies that are selling drugs that are kind of as harmful, if we're being real, but they can do it and make money for free without any like crime issues or criminal issues. There are songs about the presidency and plenty of other social and political issues in America, and that's kind of what I like about it. The lyrics are there, the sounds are there, and the writing for the most part is there. If I had any complaints about this album, it would be the track listing does get a bit inconsistent, to be completely honest with you. There's some moments there where I'm just not impressed with what's happening. There's some moments where like some tracks just pale in comparison to others, and I think the album as a whole still ends up being fantastic, but that's what's holding it back. That's its biggest fault, in my opinion. It's an 83 out of 100. It's a great album. I recommend it, not only to emo fans, but to rock fans in general. Let this album be your gateway into emo, and if you're an emo fan that hasn't heard of this band, give them a shot. This album is easily their best, in my opinion. It's worth a listen. Finally, last album, Rapsody's Laila's Wisdom. So Rapsody, MC, very, very talented one. Let me tell you, this girl has bars on bars on bars. She can spit. She's good at coming up with song topics that are very interesting. This album is produced by Ninth Wonder, so the beats are all great. Just her in general, has to be one of the best wordsmiths in her lane of popularity, I would say. I think that's pretty fair. I've never been big into her albums as a whole, but she's dropped some great features, some great tracks that I've liked. There just haven't been many consistent albums like this one, though. This one right here, you need to give it a shot if you're a hip-hop fan. You've probably already seen tons of critics raving about it, maybe even tons of fans too, and there's a reason. They're not just blowing smoke. This is serious. This is a good album. Anyone who wants some lyrics and some good beats, you're gonna get it here. The beats are very jazzy. They have a very funk influenced sound as well. The bars, there's plenty of one-liners, plenty of wordplay that's pretty interesting. It's quotables that are like worthy of being screenshotted and sent to your friends. Also, the song topics here are all pretty friggin' great. There's one where like she's talking about this guy who's her neighbor, and she wants to like hit on him or whatever. It's super sensual. It's pulled off great. And we have freaking Busta Rhymes at the end with this gravelly voice, Barry White thing. It's so funny. But throughout this album, you're getting those topics, you're getting those lyrics, you're getting that thoughtfulness, and that's what really sets this album apart. It really comes off like it was meticulously crafted, and I really believe that it was, both by Ninth Wonder, but especially by Rapsody. She really did her thing. Hooks, bars, good beats. If you're a hip-hop fan, there's no excuse. Give this one a shot. It's an 85 out of 100 for me. So, yeah, thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you think of these albums in the comments below, and I'll see you on the next video.